Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday, January 9th edition of the MMAOB Daily Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Adam Martin, and I'll be taking you guys through the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. Crazy, eh? Like, we're already done the 3rd of January, and this year's going by really fast. Anyways, I got to mention, I did a podcast yesterday with Cole Sheldon breaking down and recapping the best of the 2010s decade. That was a really cool podcast. Go back and check that out. Man, so much happened this decade, but in the UFC, my personal life, everything. So 10 years goes by fast, but there's so much that happens in 10 years as well. So definitely go back and check that podcast out from yesterday. Let's get to today's news. All right, first thing, let's start with Mike Perry. He's come under fire for his use of the N-word, which obviously is not a very bright idea. Stupid. It really is stupid. He said this stuff in the past. I remember he had some kind of feud going with Tyron Woodley at one point and said it to him. But now he's going after Michael J. White and use the N-word again. Just dumb, just really dumb, and Mike Perry's obviously not the brightest guy, but at the same time, like, he is a professional athlete who fights in one of the biggest sports in the world and one of the biggest sporting organizations in North America. Like, you think he would be a little smarter than this. And, first off, I don't agree with his comments. And second off, why hasn't the UFC said anything? Well, go and make a statement saying we don't condone this kind of behavior. Just go to the NHL or something and say Alex Ovechkin or something said the N-word on his Twitter. Of course he would be in trouble, man. Or NFL or MLB. It doesn't matter. It's stupid. So yeah, I don't agree with what Mike Perry's saying. Angela Hill went after him a little bit, saying what you're saying is wrong, and it is. So to me, he's got what's coming for him, because what he said was bad. You can't say that kind of stuff. It's just 2020. You can't go on the internet and say the N-word. It's really stupid. Mike Perry says people are going to be offended by anything. I do agree with Mike Perry in the sense that people do get offended by everything these days. But in this particular instance, I think it's okay. Especially. People that are hurt by that word. So to me, it's just stupid. And again, it just speaks to the bigger issue of the UFC not, doing anything about it. I remember Matt Mitrione said something about Fallen Fox years ago, and he got suspended or something. You see once in a while the UFC will give a slap on the wrist to people, but for the most part, I feel like UFC fighters get away with a lot. And I get they're independent contractors, and I get that, it's the fight game, and they're going to say stuff, and fighters will say stuff that is not the nicest thing. But, in this particular case, it's kind of stupid, right? So to me, it's does he get suspended? Probably not. They like Mike Perry. That's the thing. They want to see him back in the cage. They like him. They want him to fight often for the UFC. But at the same time, you got to go and tell the guy what you wrote was not a very bright idea. And you should definitely issue an apology saying that you're sorry you hurt people's feelings, because he did. So, for him to go and kind of double up on it now, it's really dumb. And I'd like to say I expect more from Mike Perry, but honestly I don't. But it's pretty stupid. Let's got some comments here. Boo-hoo. Yeah, listen, man, does it offend me personally? Not necessarily, but I definitely can see why it offends other people, so I know what you're saying. And then other comment, contributor Mike needs to stop defending himself to every troll who signal flags everything he says. I only saw him respond to Angela Hill, who's a UFC fighter as well, and obviously he's not going to go back from his comments. So again, for me personally, it doesn't affect my life, but I can see why it affects other people's life. It wasn't the brightest idea, guys. I think you can admit that. Anyways, move on to the next thing. UFC 246 press conference has been released it's going to take place next Wednesday in Las Vegas at the Palms Casino Theater. If you guys are in Vegas, tickets are free and open to the public, so definitely go. It's going to be sweet. Anytime Conor McGregor does a press conference, it's always fun. So especially with Cerrone, I think there's going to be a lot going on there. I hope that the reporters there ask Conor some tough questions, ask him about, the sexual assault allegations, ask him about the other stuff that's been going on outside the octagon. I have a feeling they're not going to ask him about it, but for me, if I was there, I would ask those tough questions. But maybe that's why I'm not at these pressers anymore. When I used to go, I used to ask really tough questions, and I don't think Dana White liked it too much. I remember one time I was asking about Bellator, and I don't think he was too happy about that. But it is what it is, you know. I just hope that the people that do go do ask him, you know, some tough questions. Also, I got to mention my friend James Lynch. You guys know him. His roles changed apparently at the score, and you know James does such a great job at these events, and I think he does ask some of the better questions there. He's not going to be covering the events for the time being, and I hopefully he can get back in there at some point, because without James, honestly, like I'm not too confident the questions we're going to hear, guys, at these pressers are actually tough questions. I think you're going to hear a lot of like low ball questions and just easy questions to answer, you know. So I'd really like to see some guys there that are going to ask some tougher questions. It is what it is. Let's do Ben Askren next. Ben Askren. So I've talked about this in the past. He wants to do MMA commentary, and apparently Ben Askren is going to be trying. He did try out actually already for the ESPN commentary team, which I think is a great idea. I think Ben Askren behind the mic is always good. And I think he's going to do really well if he does get this gig with ESPN. I'm assuming it's going to be covering MMA, but maybe it's going to be covering college wrestling as well. I think both things would be great for Ben Askren. You know, love or hate Ben, the guy is really good on the mic, and he's a very smart, intelligent guy. He's very good and very smart about techniques and explaining them to people. So I think this is a really good fit, personally. You know, we'll see if he gets the job, but I mean, he can't be any worse than Dominic Cruz, right? Like Dominic Cruz. He's just the most biased guy to listen to. I think Ben would be a lot better personally. All right, let's get to some fight announcements here. UFC 247. Okay, by the way, the bout order was released for UFC 247. And honestly, bout order doesn't matter that much. You know, it's just a bout order. But why the hell is Juan Adams versus Justin Tafa on the main card? Are you kidding me? That fight has no reason to be on the main card. It's the third fight up. So the main card for UFC 247, that's next month in Houston. Jones versus Reyes, obviously, as the main event, and then co-main Shevchenko, Chukagian. But then you have Tafa and Adams, and these guys are coming off losses. Why was that on the main card? And then you got Bektic Ige, which is a really good fight, and then Lewis Latifi. I think that's a good fight too. So, you know, 4 of the 5 fights are fine, but why is Juan Adams versus Justin Tafa on the main card when you got a fight like Jimmy Rivera versus Marlon Vera buried on the prelims? It's really strange. Even like Morono Lima, I think that's going to be a really fun fight. And even this guy Miles Johns is buried way on the early prelims, so kind of strange. Anyways, also added to that card, we have a bantamweight bout between Domingo Pilarte and Jordan Newson. So that's a new fight added to this card. Domingo Pilarte, he is coming off a loss to Felipe Corrales by split decision. That surprised a lot of people, including myself. He was a pretty big favorite there. Lost a splitter there to Corrales. And overall, he is 8-2 in his career. He was on a 5-fight win streak before that, including a win over Vince Morales at the Contender Series. And now he will be taking on Journey Newson. So that guy's a pretty cool name. And yes, he actually was named after the famous rock band, which is kind of hilarious. But yeah, Journey Newson, 9-2 record. He is coming off a loss as well, but to Ricardo Ramos, who's a really, really good fighter. Before that, won 6 straight fights. So a very close fight here for sure. I kind of lean towards Newsom, though. I just think that he is the better fighter. I wasn't impressed at all with Pilarte in that fight. Switching gears, UFC Auckland. I think this card's almost full, but they got a couple fights added up, including this one between Loma Lookboonmee, who is actually a pretty good prospect at women's 115. She's 4-1 in her career, coming off a nice win over Alexander Albu by split decision. She looked good in that fight. Overall 4-1, like I mentioned. And then Hannah Goldy's her opponent here, 5-1. She's coming off a loss to Miranda Granger. Wasn't too impressed with her there. She did come off the Contender Series. She had that win over Kaylee Robbins. I don't know. I wasn't too impressed with her against Granger or Robbins, to be quite frank. I don't think she's really UFC caliber. I kind of lean towards Lookboonmee in this fight, especially since she'll be fighting close to home. Also on that card, we got Maki Pitolo, Coconut Bombs taking on Takashi Sato. Maki Pitolo 12-5. He's coming off a really ugly loss to Callum Potter. He should have won that fight, guys, and it was a bad loss, and Potter was a pretty big underdog, if I'm not mistaken. Before that, he won 3 straight fights, including a nice win over Justin Sumter in the Contender Series. He does have experience fighting for Bellator, so he is a dangerous guy, but man, that loss to Potter really disappointed me. Like, that's a fight he should have won. Anyways, he takes on Takashi Sato here, 15-3 record. Sato's coming off a submission loss to Bilal Muhammad, but did knock out Ben Saunders before that. And overall, he does have quite a few knockouts on his resume. Interesting fight here, but I mean, if it's going to be a standing fight, which I think it's probably going to be, you got to figure Pitolo a little bit. I'm just disappointed with the guy after that performance. And the last fight announcement here, UFC Columbus, Randy Costa against Martin Day. Randy Costa coming off a nice win, 5-1 overall in his career, coming off a nice win over Boston Salmon. Pretty much got him out of the UFC with that knockout. He did lose to Brandon Davis by submission in his debut, but bounced back nicely with that win over Salmon. And he'll be taking on Martin Day here. Martin Day's 9-3 in his career. He is coming off a loss to Pingwan Liu by split decision. Before that, he won 3 straight fights. A lot of people have told me this guy is very talented, but I didn't see it in that fight with Liu, who's barely clinging on a roster spot himself. This guy's obviously got to win this fight to stay in the UFC. Kind of lean towards Costa, though, after that last win. He looked pretty good in it. So we'll see what happens there. But, yeah, some good fights coming up. Just still scratching my head about that Tafa Adams fight being on the main card. Like, that's just really strange. There's a few other things to mention here. I saw this earlier. Charles Oliveira, he wants Justin Gaethje or Kevin Lee at UFC Brasilia. So right now, from what I saw, like I said the other day, Sherdog had the main event listed as Elizu Zaleski dos Santos versus Lee, or versus who was it? Elizu Zaleski. Sorry guys, one sec. I forgot who it was. He just fought Li Jingliang, and his next fight is against Alexei Kunchenko. That's the fight. So that's what Sherdog said was the main event. I don't think that's a good main event. You know, I'd rather see Damian Maia versus Gilbert Burns as the main event. But if that's going to be the co-main event, then there could be a spot for main event. And now DuBronx says he wants Justin Gaethje or Kevin Lee. Listen, I love DuBronx, and listen, he deserves a step up. Like this guy, he's been fighting guys like Jared Gordon, who are way ranked below him, and that fight didn't make any sense. But with a 6-fight win streak, with all 6 wins by stoppage, it's time for him to get a top 15, at least a top 15, if not a top 10 opponent. I do think fighting a guy like Gaethje is a bit more than this guy can chew, though. Like, that's a tough fight for Charles Oliveira. Like, if Gaethje fights Oliveira, you have to go with Gaethje by knockout in the first round. Kevin Lee, same thing, most likely. But Kevin Lee, he could go to the ground with this guy. And if the fight goes to the ground, you know, Oliveira has the ability to submit him. I know his striking's looked a lot better. I've been very impressed with it. But honestly, if he fights Gaethje, that's a terrible matchup for him. But I will say this, like, I am crediting this guy and his team for saying, hey, you know what, let's give me the tough guys here. You know, this guy's been fighting guys like Jared Gordon and Nick Lentz, who are decent fighters, but really not, you know, anything close to the top 15. And he wants to step up now. So I can respect the fact that he's looking for a step up, but at the same time, I just think those particular matchups are not the greatest matchups for him, but we'll see what happens there. Also, Jimmy Smith, I just saw this morning. Jimmy Smith went after Big John McCarthy, not like in a horrible way or anything like that. Like, he says he respects him and everything, but he just basically disagreed completely with what Big John said about MVP and Anderson Silva. Like, and I think a lot of us feel the same way. His comments were pretty ridiculous. You know, and I love Big John. I think Big John is, you know, maybe the greatest referee of all time, one of the greatest minds in MMA of all time. He is a brilliant guy. But what he was saying about MVP and Anderson Silva's records being very comparable is so ridiculous. Like, it just shows that this guy obviously works for Bellator now. Like, what he was saying just doesn't make sense. You know, he's like, oh, if you look at their careers, they're very comparable. I'm going to go do a really quick comparison right now, guys. But it doesn't make sense. Like, okay, so let's just do this quickly. So what Jimmy Smith's argument was, you know, a lot of us forget that Anderson Silva started his career as a welterweight, like, and he did. You know, a lot of his early fights were at welterweight. Okay, so if you look at basically Big John's argument was the first 18 fights of Anderson's career were the same as the first 18 fights of Michael Page. You look at some of his opponents in his first 18 fights. I mean, he's fought 2 really tough guys in Paul Daly and Douglas Lima. After that, you got guys like Fernando Gonzalez, who were like, you know, average fighters, or, you know, Nashon Burrell, Ricky Rainey. Like, he's in the UFC, but he's not very good. So really, out of 18 guys, you really have 2 like high quality fighters. And then you go to Anderson Silva in his first 18 fights, and like, look at some of the names he fought. Carlos Newton, former UFC welterweight champion. Juan Carnero, who fought in the UFC for years. Hayato Max Sakurai, who was, and Jimmy Smith mentioned this, like the #1 welterweight in the world, and Anderson beat him. Also, you got guys like Fabricio Camois. He was in the UFC for a while. Jeremy Horn, who was a longtime UFC fighter. Lee Murray. So, and he gets go up a little bit. Rio Chonin, Jorge Rivera. Anyways, the point is, love Big John, but the comments were ridiculous. And I like how the fact that Jimmy Page did a podcast, or Jimmy Smith, excuse me, not Jimmy Page. Jimmy Smith did a podcast about his comments and just disagreeing with him. I think it was pretty good of him to do that. Pretty noble. You know, now that Jimmy's not with Bellator or the UFC, he's allowed to do this kind of stuff. I'm sure Big John doesn't appreciate it, but you know what? Hey, Big John's a commentator now and a podcast host. People are going to disagree with what he said. Anyways, I agree with what Jimmy Smith was saying. All right, so that's it for today's show, guys. Once again, thanks for tuning in. You can check me on Twitter at MMAOB. The podcast is available at MMAOddsbreaker.com. The site's got kind of a new look, so definitely, let me know what you think about that. It's Nick and the developers that changed it. I think it looks really good. Also, check me out at bjpen.com and MMARings.net as well. No event this weekend, guys, but another weekend off, so just relax, and then we'll be back for UFC 246 next week. All right, guys, have a great day. I'll be back tomorrow for the Friday edition of the podcast. Have a good one. Bye.